It's too much. Hi there. Welcome to episode 10 of Yarns and Yarns. I'm Shay McIntosh Ford, and this is a show where we talk about all things yarn related, whether that's yarns as in fibers or yarns as in stories. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma with my husband, my 2 boys, and our spoiled little puppy. Welcome to new viewers, and welcome back to returning friends. As you can hear, I'm talking again, but I don't know how long I'll be able to keep this up, so I might be recording in small chunks still. We'll see. This particular recording day is Thursday, December 17th, 2020. My vocal cords are still healing, but they are getting better, and I'll get into all my suspicions on what's causing all of that later. I have no FOs, 2 hoes, and a whole bunch of whips, and a ton of acquisitions. So my first FO is the front or back panel to my Riviette sweater. I just need to make an exact copy of this, just a whole other one, and then you see them all together. This is where I was the last time you saw it, my little snowflake progress keeper. And so the lace paneling in the middle, you basically just bind off this middle stitch, like this center bit of knitting here. It's knitting through the back loop, and you just bind that off and split it. And then when you go to make the 2 armholes, the second one you add with another ball of yarn. So yarn management was a little tricky on this one. I kept accidentally feeding the yarn through the neckline while it was still on the needles. It was kind of fussy. So I'm taking a break from this yarn for now. It's Lion Brand's True Boo. It's in the mushroom colorway. Where's the word? There it is. I'm getting a little blown out. The mushroom colorway. And so it's rayon made from bamboo, and it's really slippery. So it can be really hard to grab attention on this yarn. It just slides right through your fingers, but not in a good way. And so I find that when I knit with it, I can't knit unless I'm using this hand cream. And like, this is the only hand cream that works. I've tried other lotions, but this one is, I got this because that day job I had, you couldn't have any kind of hand cream that had fragrances in it, so that's where this came from. But it says right on the back here that you're only supposed to use a little bit because over application can lead to stickiness. That's what I need, stickiness. So in general, this is a really simple pattern. I would definitely do it again. I just probably won't use the same kind of yarn. The biggest problem I had, though, that I don't know if the yarn will make a difference, maybe it will, is the cabling. I didn't have trouble when it was in the middle, but when I got to the neckline, when the cabling is right here on the edge, there were lots of times where the stitches would drop right off the needle, and it was so maddening. And so I ended up, every time I would cable, I started using the stoppers at the ends of the needles just to keep the stitches from sliding off the needle while I was in the middle of working the cable. But I still like the way it's turning out, though. Isn't that pretty? I used the Chalgoose Twist US size 4, the 3.5 millimeters needles, and I used the 50-inch cord, the very long one that I have, but that's on a current whip, so you'll see that later. My next hoe is also sort of part of my acquisitions. They're called ghostly mitts, and let's see. So you put that little loop on your finger, and then when they're done, I will have seamed the cuff to go around this way, so that this is how sort of they're going to look. But it is lacy, and so they still need to be blocked. Well, this needs to be blocked. I haven't made the other one yet. But I'll see if I can stretch it out. Can you see some of the lace work in there? But I'll wait to block them until I make the other one. But I wouldn't really call these, I know they're called ghostly mitts, but I wouldn't really call them mitts. I think my mom once called this style a hand flower. But this is one of the yarns that I got in my acquisitions. It's this one here. And it's easier to see when it's knit up. There's a nice halo on this yarn. I have no idea what this is. It could be alpaca, mohair, I really don't know. But this came from my mom, my other mom, my stepmom. I call them both mom. And she sent me a whole bunch of her stash because her cats don't let her knit anymore. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. So this pattern came from the October edition of Interweave Knits magazine. And so they call them ghostly mitts because they're intended to be made with white yarn. But I get that magazine free through my library, so that's how I was able to knit these up. If I end up getting a subscription to a magazine, my husband will start throwing them away because I'll accumulate too many of them. There was another pair of lacy fingerless gloves that I really wanted to make for myself, but in the pattern it was only one size and they were an inch too small around for my hand circumference. So maybe if I'm feeling adventurous later, I might give it a try and see if I can adjust the size a little bit. I guess just move up a couple needle sizes, right? So for these mitts, I used my Chalgoose US size 2, 2.75 millimeters needles. So just my regular, I don't know how long this cord is. It's one of the longer ones. I think it's like 42 inches. But these are not the interchangeable ones. I love my Chalgoose. On to whips. My first whip. Shh. It's a Christmas present for my hubby. Could you hear me? It's these socks. And I know they look a little strange, but there's a method to my madness. I noticed that some of my more comfortable store-bought socks have a 2-inch ribbing that hugs the instep of my foot. And since these are for hubby, he's very, very practical. He's not about style or anything. So I want his socks to be really, really comfortable. And so I'm hoping that this will do the trick. I don't know. Is there a sock pattern that has a 2-inch ribbing around the instep? Have you guys ever tried knitting a pair of socks with something like that? I would really like to know, how did it work? So if you could just comment below, I would love to see it. Thanks. So as you can see, this is where my heels are going. And then I only got maybe a half an inch left, 1/4 inch left of this yarn. And then I'm gonna start the toes and then the heels. So this is Patent Scroy socks, and it's in the blue brown marl colorway, and the heels and toes are going to be, it's also Patent Scroy socks, and that is in the, I can't get this right, in the Gentry Gray. There we go. I had to take a break from talking about this one. Hubby was on his lunch break and I didn't want him to hear me. The door's now closed. Okay, so these are my Chalgoos US 1. What's this millimeter? I can't remember. 2.25. I think this is, again, one of the longer cords, like 42 inches or something. And then, of course, they're 2 at a time. And I did 72 stitches. And I think 15 2x2 cuff. And of course, I don't know how many rows of the instep. I just did it up to 2 inches. And yes, hubby knows I'm making these socks, but he just doesn't know that they are for him. He doesn't watch my show, so I don't worry about him finding out. Yeah, he calls my knitting sewing. And I planned on a frozen berry break later in the show, according to my script that I wrote out for myself. But my throat's getting pretty sore, but I'm very excited because it's a lot easier to eat since I found frozen raspberries. So I think that my next whip is going to have to be my last one. Actually, it is my last whip, but it will be the last thing I show you before tomorrow. My throat's, the frozen berries, it helps, but I think that I'm kind of done for the day with talking. So my next whip is actually my hooded mantle for the Ren Fair. And this is what I have so far, just a little bit. This is the hood part, the part that goes around your face, and it has a casing here for, I guess I'll make an I-cord as a drawstring for that. And then I finished this bordering. It's a Celtic knotwork that I found for the bordering. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put on the mantle part. That is going to call for another border around the bottom of the mantle, and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to make the closed version or the button-up version. So we'll see which one that goes. But I like that so far. I think that looks really pretty. I like the Celtic knots. And the pattern for the knotwork that I found online was really hard to read. So let me pull this out. Is that it? No. Yeah, that's it. So I found, I decided to just kind of copy it out onto graph paper. So you can see where I did my repeats here and here. And it actually turned out rather simple after that. Although it's been a while since I've done color work, and I am not a fan of purling color work. I don't like catching my floats on the purl side. The knit side is fine, but it's awkward to purl and do color work at the same time. So I'm ready for it to be in the round. This actually has to be knitted for another 70 rows, or up to 70 rows, and then I'll be able to gather it, attach it at the bottom, and then knit in the round for the long tube decreased hood, that little pointy hood that's on there. And I am using the Chalgoos Twist US size 8, the 5, I don't know if you can see that, 5mm needles. And this is where my extra long 50-inch cording is. So I really don't mind knitting with an extra long cord. It doesn't really get in my way too much. And I like magic loop more than double pointed needles, so I just find them very useful. So this time I picked an acrylic yarn on purpose because the Ren Fair is in May and I didn't want it to be too hot to wear if I picked a wool blend. So I went with loops and threads, which I found at Michael's, the soft and shiny, and it is in the parsley colorway. And then the yellow, so I couldn't find a yellow in the loops and threads, same line, so this is also shiny, so I figured it would go okay. This is my usual stuff because I couldn't find the green in this one. This is Caron Simply Soft, and this is in the Sunshine colorway. And it should go pretty nicely. I have two Ren Fair dresses and they're both green. One of them I believe my aunt made. I haven't actually worn that one yet, and I might need to take it in a little bit. But they're both about this color green, so I'll put one of them here. And so they should go really nicely. And technically I have a third Ren Fair dress, but it's all white because it was my wedding dress. So yeah, I'm not going to wear that one. So as a little bonus real quick, I am going to make these cute dragon scale gloves to go with my hooded mantle out of the Gentry Gray from the heels and toes of Happy Socks. I think this would make a cute color for the dragon scale gloves. It might be too hot, but I can always take gloves off easily. It is now Friday, December 18th. The boys are done with school, so they will be interrupting me quite a bit. You'll hear them in the background probably. They can't hear me because they were both wearing headphones. So they actually, today is their last day of online school, so I'm letting them play their video games. They're very excited about that. Happy Ghost. Whatever that means. My voice has had a long night's rest, and it's still sore from all the talking yesterday. Hopefully I can keep it up today. And then this morning I tried to eat a piece of bacon too soon out of the frying pan, so I blistered the roof of my mouth right behind my front teeth. So I'm gonna bat 1,000 today. So one thing I forgot to mention yesterday was these socks. I meant to say that they're going in the Stocking Stuffers Mal, which is over on Ravelry, and it's being hosted by Amy from Happy Little Yarn and Lisa from Knit All the Yarn podcast. So the rules basically are it has to be small enough to fit in a stocking, and no whips. I think it ends on December 31st. So if you are a quick knitter, you might have a little time to enter into that. And there's a couple prizes that they're giving away for that. I will link everything down below. On to acquisitions. As I said, my mom sent me a whole bunch of really great stuff. All of it is natural fibers, so no synthetics or anything. And one of the things she did was kind of neat because I have been wanting to learn brioche knitting for a while. I was getting ready to just start it on some cheap acrylic yarn here, but she had already started, and she had paired together this really neat combination of pink and brown, and it just looks really great together. The project that she started, I couldn't continue, first of all because I don't know how to brioche yet, but also a bunch of the stitches had fallen off the needle, and I didn't know how to pick that up in brioche. I'm going to give it a try. I actually did try a couple of times. She sent this book with all the yarns, so weekend knitting book, and I think she was trying to do one of the brioche patterns in here, but I couldn't tell which one she was doing because she had used a provisional cast on, and it looked like she was knitting in the round, and the provisional cast on was for the scarf. So I'm not quite sure. I think she was just using it as a guide. I tried to follow the pattern in the book and I got completely lost. So I'm going to use a YouTube tutorial video, I think, for that one. So as I said, she sent me this really pretty halo yarn, which is kind of cool. It's got a shimmer to it in the sunlight. But I only used 11 grams to make that one mitt, and there's still 66 grams left on this skein. So she also sent this one. It's kind of a marled orangey yarn here, and it's probably a wool blend. So I was thinking about holding them together and making something out of them. Not quite sure yet. Maybe a hat or a cowl or something like that. I think I'd have enough for that. Maybe even a pair of fingerless gloves. I don't know. We will see. So the next one is about almost 200 grams of this. It looks like maybe a cotton blend. It's like a marled blue and green. It's really pretty. And I know these are messy skeins, but I didn't feel like reballing them because I do not have a yarn ball winder yet. I think I'm going to get one soon though. But that's really pretty. I'm not sure what I'm going to make out of that, but it's I think it's cotton because it doesn't have a lot of bounce to it, so it's kind of not stretchy. And then I've got this one here. It's I'm pretty sure this is a wool. It's like another blue greeny, or like a little green. It's more on the blue side. And then this one here, so I'm pretty sure is also wool. This one's much softer though, and it really is getting blown out. It's much darker than this, like a darker peach color. Maybe putting them together to do something with color work. I'm not sure yet. They're right around 75 grams a piece, so we'll see. This is a nice homespun, fun, like, they make me think of like carnival colors almost. And again, they're getting a little blown out. This one, I don't know, maybe it's just the way it's wound, but this one you can kind of get a better sense of the colors. They are a little darker than this, but a little bit of a homespun style. And this makes me think of my niece. I need to make something out of this for her. I think that would be great. So this is 95 gram skein, and this one's about 47. So obviously Mom made something out of that one. But I think I have to come up with something for my niece for that. I think she'd love it. She loves her pinks and purples. These are the only ones that came with labels, and oh, I just love the blues and purples on this one. Aren't they beautiful? Now these are called that. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it. They're from Japan, and they are 100% wool. And they don't even have a colorway name. The color, if I can hold it right, is 110. So these are color 110. And I think these are destined to be a matching hat and cowl. They're so soft. Nice and squishy. Really pretty. Last but not least is another knitting book that came in the package. Is this little basic knitting book, and yes, I know how to knit, but it's nice to have a book for definitions, so I don't have to keep going online and how do you Kitchener stitch, or how do you make one, so it's nice to have one of these. And also she had sent me a cottage cheese bucket full of yarn scraps, so I kind of need to go through them and see if there are any that can fit on my scrappy sock blanket. But anyway, so that's all for the things that she sent me. Thank you so much, Mom. I love it. So my last acquisition is something that's kind of fun. Is this really old knitting book. It came out in 1982. And I picked it up at a very small flea market think just south of here. And one of the things I love about old knitting books is just observing the fashions back then. So this is knitting and crochet, and you get pictures like this, which to me just solidifies the idea that men look better in knits than crochet. There's another example of men who should not wear crochet. I just think knit looks better on men. That's my opinion. Oh, and then you have some women who should not wear certain knits. So she's very serious with her martini in her early 80s garb. But there is a sweater in here that I really want to make. And it's this one. I love like the bumps in this pattern, and I like how like it stops at the elbow right here and it just goes straight down. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to omit the little flowers in it. But I would love to make this out of the Cat Lady yarns. I think it's called Woodsy Green. It's like this really deep green color. And I think it would look lovely with this pattern. But yeah, so I'd like to make this sweater. Moving on to stories. I was done with the heavy reading. The Bluest Eye and Casual Vacancy were pretty heavy duty reads. So I moved on to this fantasy story called Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. And I've actually never read anything by her before, but this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It's a folklore style retelling of the Rumpelstiltskin story. So even though there's like magic and fantastical elements to it, the folklore style still gives it a very real world feel as well. As I said, it's a retelling of the Rumpelstiltskin story with a kind of a focus on Jewish traditions. There are 6 perspective narratives to this, so you get the story from 6 different characters, but the main character, her name is Miriam, and she kind of bucks the traditional housekeeper role of a woman, and she shoulders her father's job of being a moneylender. Her father is actually terrible at money lending because he does not demand payment when it's due, and as a result, their family slowly begins to starve. But that's when Miriam decides she's had enough and she's going to start demanding payments herself. It turns out that Miriam is very resourceful, and she has quite a knack for creating wealth. At one point, though, she is riding in through the woods with her mother, and she brags about being able to turn silver into gold. And the problem with that is the woods are where and I believe I'm pronouncing it right, the Sterek live. They're a race of creatures who crave gold for reasons that you don't really find out until much later in the story. And that's where the adventure begins, with that one brag. The Sterek are sort of like these winter elves, and they're very feared by their human neighbors because they're extremely strong. And while Miriam makes this boast in the woods, their king overhears her. And so during the course of the story, he sets her many challenges on turning silver into gold. All the while, the kingdom, the human kingdom around them, is having its own adventurous trouble because they are struggling to deal with snow in the middle of June. There are a lot of great dichotomies at play in this book. You have winter and summer, fire and ice, poverty and wealth, hate and love, and just watching the characters change and grow while experiencing all of these different factors at play is what makes this such a fun read. Guess what? There's knitting. Knitting and spinning play such a very deep role in much of the story, which is another reason it made it so much fun for me to read. Normally, I try to donate my physical books after I've read them, but I enjoyed this one so much that, and also it's autographed by the author, so I think I'm going to keep this one. And I've also finished my annual reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I start that one every year, Thanksgiving night, which gives me plenty of time to read it before Christmas Day. I usually finish within a week, depending on what's going on in my life. My all-time favorite Dickens line is right after Scrooge sees the ghost of Christmas past, who has pulled back the curtain from his bed, and it says that he's as close to the spirit, as close to it as I am now to you, and I am standing in the spirit at your elbow. I just love the idea of Dickens looking over me as I'm reading his work. I think that's fabulous. This year, I chose to listen to the audio version read by Bob Neufeld on LibriVox.com. So, and that is completely free. If you would like to take a listen yourself, it doesn't take long. You have plenty of time to listen to this book before Christmas. LibriVox.com is, it's a free website. All of the books there, the audiobooks there, are works in the public domain, and they're all read by volunteers. So it's a great way to explore the classics. I just started reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, read by John Greenman. It's been years, decades probably, since I last read this one. But I recently watched an episode of Lee's channel, and she was connecting it with Christmas because of It's a Wonderful Life, and I'll link to that episode below. It took me several weeks to finally make the connection between Tom Sawyer and It's a Wonderful Life. It had been so long since I've read Tom Sawyer that my brain just went, well, maybe there's a Christmas scene in there that I couldn't remember. And it was similar to It's a Wonderful Life because you go over George Bailey's childhood. Finally, a few days ago, I'm like, duh, Tom Sawyer is the book that Clarence gives to George Bailey when he gets his wings.
There goes me, overthinking things again.
Anyway, I still am enjoying Tom Sawyer as well. I am late to the table on this one, but I'm just starting Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I've been a little unsure of the premise of this one because I'm not really into romances, but time travel in historic Scotland.
Yes, please.
The thing is, I had tried to read The Game of Thrones once upon a time, and I completely cringed at the incest. And when a book makes me cringe, I do not finish. For some reason, my brain equated Outlander with The Game of Thrones. Maybe it's because I'm not really into romance, or maybe it's because it's another sprawling epic still being written. I don't know. But I'm 4 chapters in, and so far I haven't found a reason to put it down. However, I did note that at one point her characters were drinking tea, and then suddenly, without a change of service, it was coffee. Can I edit your book, please? To the story of my vocal cords. For one shining week, I was able to drink real coffee and eat spicy sausage. I had had an endoscopy done because the long-term effects of COVID are mimicking my reactions to gluten. So there's a lot of, abdominal cramping, bathroom problems, and nausea. The only way that I know that I haven't actually been re-glutened is because I'm not vomiting anymore. The endoscopy didn't uncover what was causing all my digestive distress, but the gastro doc said there was absolutely no evidence of reflux, so he told me to go back to my normal diet. Yay! So of course, I called my ENT, my ear, nose, and throat doctor, to figure out, okay, well, what's really wrong with my vocal cords, because they're still sore. And she said it's a different kind of reflux. So I'm back to this really frustrating regimen, which includes only decaf coffee and sleeping on this really uncomfortable wedge pillow. However, my gastro doc did find a medication, finally, that's been helping with my abdominal cramping. It's really hard to fall asleep at night because of it. So I've been drinking a little bit of whiskey every night before bed just to get comfortable enough to go to sleep. Every night is definitely not healthy. And I'm thinking that the whiskey is really what's been destroying my vocal cords, because this has been going on since March. I know I've supposed to have been avoiding alcohol with this whole regimen that the ENT gave me, but until the gastro doc gave me the medication for the cramping, it was either whiskey or no sleep. Now that I've been able to avoid whiskey for a little over a week, my throat's still sore, but not achingly so. So hopefully I can go back to my normal podcasting, get through the recordings, and be all good. And on that note, I will leave it here. I hope you are well. I hope you get to craft all the yarny things and read all the books. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye. This is with what was that? Picked up it took me several weeks to make the connection. Oh, that's the book that Clarence gives to George Bailey.